Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to ask, did Pope Francis commit the cardinal sin of playing Football Manager 23 illegally? That's a big question in the dynamics of the world. But let me explain what the hell I'm talking about. If you click the thumbnail, let's just get straight into it. So Miles Jacobson actually did like a conference, the London Games conference back in November 2013, where he announced that they had worked out a Football Manager 2013 had actually been cracked back in the May of 2013. So the game had been out for the six months of the game cycle at that point, but they'd actually cracked it and been made available to legally download. So they figured this out, but how did they figure this out? Well, what they actually did was they actually have, when you play Football Manager, you may or not be aware, it's in the EULA and it's in like the terms and conditions and stuff like that. But they are able to track through software within the game your IP and how often you play. Why do you think you get this information, like how many players have been bought, how many games have been played? They track all that information because that will tell them how the game's performing. So they did this in 2013, and they were able to identify games that had illegally downloaded the actual cracked version because it had a home. It had a section in there to say, oh, by the way, ping this IP address is playing it illegally, possibly because, and I'm going to slightly guess this, they introduced de novo DRM, which is to try and stop this from happening. And what they were trying to then do is, obviously, they were being told by the IP addresses who downloaded it and they activated it, oh, by the way, this person's illegally played it. Now, 10.1 million players downloaded it from May to November. So that's 6 months. That's like now till, the next game release, potentially. But they only estimated that actually, of that 10 million players, only 1.8% was actually going to ever actually buy the game anyway. So they expected that FM 2013 actually had an increase of 144,000 sales. But they also identified that FM 13 post the crack in May would have probably made another 32,000 in sales, where players may have actually bought it instead of obviously downloading it illegally. So they didn't actually expect it that much in sales. But that much in sales, insanely, was 3.7 million in revenue. I should say $3.7 million in revenue. So that's quite a significant amount. Also, it set a Guinness World Record. Not only was it downloaded 10 million times, it became a Guinness World Record for the most pirated video game ever. That's bonkers. That is bonkers. Imagine setting a Guinness World Record for Football Manager based on the fact people downloaded it for free. Of all the illegal downloads, one of the really interesting things, which I suppose would flag to Sports Interactive even more, is bear in mind you could download this game for free, and it was downloaded 10 million times. They actually worked out that when you consider how many players had actually downloaded it, only 18%, which is less than 2 million players of those that downloaded it, played it. How many times do you reckon? Once? Twice? No. 100 times? 200 hours? How often do you play Football Manager? 18% of those who downloaded it illegally played it only more than 5 times. So they could track exactly how many times, and again, this is on your gameplay and all the other stats, they worked out, actually, 18% of them only played it 5 times. So they could probably, that 80% of it, they were going, well, yeah, that wouldn't have been a lost sale because they probably wouldn't have bought it. They played it, but they didn't like it. And that's probably informed them of more and more issues that they have to move forward with on the onboarding process and all these other things we now get. But it's a really interesting point. 18% of that player base only played it more than 5 times over the 6 months. So there you go. Now, Miles also pointed out that Football Manager Handheld had also been downloaded previously illegally, and they pointed out that for every legitimate sale on Android OS for the year before, in April 2012, they acknowledged that it actually lost 9-1 back then. And they said actually when it came to the November 2013, that went from 9-1 ratio to 11-1 ratio. So that meant for every game sold, 11 players were playing an illegal downloaded cracked version. Now, when we're talking about, well, what does this all matter? Well, think about it this way, okay? We now have Football Manager via Netflix. We have Football Manager via Game Pass. We have Football Manager via Apple Arcade. We have Football Manager via PlayStation Plus. We have Football Manager on Epic. We have Football Manager on Steam. We have all these different platforms. And what they're basically trying to do now is crack down on the illegal piracy. Now, obviously, they've got 14 million pound. They got 14 million plus players playing Football Manager 2024, which they celebrated. Now, I know from the information that's mainly through downloads on Netflix of at least 9 to 10 million players. So, if you think about it that way, you can see why it's worked for the Android and what they're trying to do here. That's okay. But the problem is, this is why they've then made it, trying to make it more affordable, because the game's only 40 quid, but a lot of players still don't really want to play that much. Like, for example, I buy it from console, and console actually, for everyone going, oh, console is rubbish, console costs more than the PC version. If you haven't got the pre-beta, or you haven't got a discount code from one of the fellow creators, you know, you're paying 30 quid. Console's 45 quid. You may have 10% discount, but you're still paying 45 quid. If you're paying for Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, for example, and that's not day one on PlayStation Plus, that's day one on Game Pass, that's still £7 or £13 a month. And if you only play Football Manager once as a one game you play on it, you're paying 80 odd quid or 100 odd quid for Game Pass because of the amount of time you spend on Football Manager. It's a lot of money. And it's the same with mobile. You're paying for Netflix. If you don't use Netflix, then you're wasting your money because you should watch Netflix. If you're paying £5 a month or £7 a month and just playing the Football Manager game on your phone. It is getting more expensive to play Football Manager through subscription services. But that's why they're going for it. Now, let's get back to why do I think Pope Francis played it illegally. Well, with that 10 million players, they worked out that 3.2 million came from China, 1.03 million came from Turkey, and 781,000 came from Portugal. So that roughly worked out, if you put a pie chart up, 50% of the cake. And then the next levels down was Italy. Italy had 547,000 copies downloaded. Now, one copy was from the Vatican. And therefore, the question still begs, does Pope Francis, God rest his soul, was he the person we know is a really passionate football fan? He's banned himself watching TV, but he didn't ban himself from playing Football Manager, I bet. Did he illegally download it? I don't know how much a cardinal gets paid. Maybe he did take it for free. Anyway, if you like this and you want more stories of what we can find on Football Manager and stuff like that, please let me know. Like and subscribe down below. Until next time, take care. Arrivederci. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.